Why are we so fascinated by Starforts? Is it the fractal designs, much like a snowflake? Is it the unknown? In this video, I'll combine old theories to ask some new questions. Right guys, so coming up is some clips from an old video that I made must be over a year ago, and it was called Mudflood Reset, One God's Cleanse is Another Man's Purge. Now, in this I was talking about, is mudflood reset, is it biblical, is it an act of God, or is it a man-made purge? Is it a fact that when I'm talking about our Starforts, are they causing earthquakes and liquefaction, or are they there to prevent a natural, what is classed as a biblical reset and mudflood cleanse because of the tectonic plates and how they are set up in this realm, and obviously harmonics and how earthquakes are caused? Is it a fact that the reason these elites built all these Starforts, or the powers that be, whoever built them, the ancient tech, did they build them to resist or calm the effects down of the liquefaction or earthquakes in the regions? Because if you look at the maps of Starforts, for instance, like 13th Monkey, I'll put a link to their channel, and Colm Gibney have done a hell of a lot of great work on Starforts and the locations on this plane. Now, if you think about it, there's two ways of looking at it. They're either causing all this or they're trying to prevent it. Because if you think about it, we think we are gods. I know spiritually we can be, but you know what I'm trying to get at is a case of if something happened, and for instance, look at the cleanse description at the beginning, to clean away from sin. If we are in a purgatory type of place, an hourglass, like I've talked about in my Tempest Fugit video where I was talking about how could the lands be, you know, moving down in regard to sin and cleanse. Now, if these were built to stop this effect, could it be? So this is what this video is coming up. It's about the etymology behind mudflood itself and how humans, from a biblical point of view and another cultural around the world, we are made from dirt and dust. And it's funny how it's all come from dirt and mud because it means to cleanse. And you'll see other things as well.
Cleanse. To free from dirt, to clean, purify. To spiritually purify, to free from sin or guilt, to purge. C-L-E-A-N-S-E. Cleanse.
Latin converter time. People go, oh, what's he going to come up with now? In regard to this, it's about mud floods and things and how we know they are resets. But I just found something interesting in the etymology and the Latin converter of names. Now, obviously, this is down to interpretation on what information you do find, like anything. But for me, it does make sense. And hopefully in this video, this is what I'm going to be trying to show you, how it is a reality, it is a cleanse, it is a purge. Whether it's full-on a biblical reset by the creator, or do the evil parasites have some form of device to help this along. So this is what it's about. So as you can see, you can type in mudflood and you basically just get mudflood in the Latin, but breaking it down, you get mud, which means luto. So if you look into luto, obviously it comes under Portuguese because it has some form of Portuguese in it. It means morning. And if anyone doesn't know what morning means, obviously it's morning in the morning in the daytime, but this means morning as a funeral and then death. As you can see, mourning sorrow. So far mud could mean a sorrow. But as you can see, if I change that to Latin, it means mud. So as you can see, it's just the etymology and how we pronounce in different languages. It can affect how things come out, which is obvious, isn't it? But as you can see, now I need to switch over, do I? As you can see, luto, but what you'll find is luto hence moves to, in etymology chimes, lutum, which is dirt, same as mud. But this is where the interesting thing gets. As you can see, lutum, dirt. Go back over to the other one, and here is lutum, etymology, from luo, to wash, to cleanse. That's just blew me away. And this was the whole point of this video, as resets are wiping us, taking not just our memories, because obviously a lot of people believe that our memories get reset. Just another type of thing. But if you just look at that one, it means wash, to cleanse. So even the word mudflood means to cleanse. Now if you're thinking, that's a bit far stretched, that, Paul, you'll soon be agreeing with me on this. Now if you can see, let me just put that under, and I'll just show you the flood. Inundatio. So inundatio, as you know, inundatio sounds like inundation, but it means inundo, overflow, inundate. Inundation, overflowing flood, by extension a crowd of people. So you're talking about cleansing people, or overflowing people, flooding people, to clean the situation. Now you're talking about a reset, so even the word mudflood means to cleanse people, to clean away, to purge people, as you saw at the beginning. That is just wowed me. Now when I said to you a minute ago, we even do it today, people, and not even realise. Just look at this. Oh, mudflood cleanses. So you're cleansing your skin, you are purging away the old dead skin. It's just the same thing. See? Mud masks. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And man became a living soul. Here's a Sumerian tablet depicting the creation myth. Son of Anu, god of gods, with the help of his half-sister Ninki, created man to toil and do the necessary heavy labour. One of the gods was sacrificed, and his body and blood were mixed with clay. From that material, the first human being was created in the likeness of the gods. The first man was created in Eden, a Sumerian word which means flat terrain. In the poem Epic of Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh is mentioned as a garden of the gods, is located in the Mesopotamia area. Here you have Prometheus moulding, shaping humans from clay. See, another one, and I'm just including a few here, not a great deal. Here you have Colm, who made humans on the divine potter's wheel out of clay. So there is another one to go along with Prometheus, the Sumerian, and the biblical. And here you have Nua, the Chinese god, creating humans out of the clay of the soil. And right here we have the Earth Diver. The Earth Diver is a common character in various traditional creation myths. In these stories, a supreme being usually sends an animal into the primordial waters to find bits of sand or mud from which to build habitable land. Some scholars interpret these myths psychological, while others interpret them cosmological. In both cases, or emphasize place on the beginnings, emanating from the depth. Earth diver myths are common in Native American folklore, can be found among the Chukoki and Yugahir, the Tatars, or the Tatars, as I used to say. I used to call them the Tatars when I was growing up, because I was being brought up on, the Tatars, Tartarian, and that was the only link I had at the time being young. We just knew them as the Tatars, and obviously being young, and I just call them the taters. Taters are potatoes. That's just how I used to say it. And now that is why I remember the Tartarian civilization as the taters, the Tartars. And I'll carry on. And many Finno-Ugarian traditions, the patterns of distribution of these stories suggest they have a common origin in the eastern Asiatic coastal region, spreading as peoples migrated west into Siberia and east to the North American continent. It's interesting that you have the Tartars in with this, and I know people will say There are other nations linked with Tartary, and there is so many origins, Turkish, Mongolian, Chinese, you name it, we have it. Russian, obviously, with the Tatars, that's what I was brought up, the Russian, Ukrainian Tatars. But what's interesting is it's mentioned them in the Earth Dive, and I'm talking about the cleansing, and I'm talking about the Tempest Fuji being in the hourglass and the lands being sucked down below and water coming over it. You know what I mean? So it's getting there when it's mentioning it in the creation stories. I just found it fascinating, and that's why I've included this. And here's the last one, because there's loads I could have used using clay and dust, and I believe this is from the Quran. God had created human from water and dust, therefore we find that water is about 2/3 of our body. So mixing water with dust produces clay, which is our origin. God says, and indeed we created man Adam out of an extract of clay, water and dust. So we have all these cultures, civilizations, religions, all having very similar creation stories about humans being made from mud, and I could have included so many more, but wasn't the video for that. It was basically just using the idea of the mud flood as maybe a hypothetical or metaphorical example. Think about it. If people are being overrun by a mud flood or a liquefaction and they're trying to escape it, can you imagine if you are seeing people crawling out of the mud? You would think they were like some sort of golem or an alien. So could this be where the actual stories came from? People were witnessing people walking out of the mud, and it was like a rebirth, it was like a cleanse, it was like a baptismal event that these people survived, and this is how the creation of human from water and dust came about. This is just an idea, because there's so many cultures, like I said, talking about this. Now, what this stands in point of view of the video that I'm trying to make is, when you look at Europe, we have a huge plate. It covers, from the UK all the way over to Russia, and it's an absolutely massive plate. We don't have earthquakes like everyone else has. Now, I know we have it in Greece area and the Mediterranean, but like mainland, Europe, where like England, France and all that, you do get earthquakes, but you don't get them to the seismic event that are wiping out cities like we see all around this realm. Now, is that because we have an excess amount of Starforts? So think about it, and I'll be showing you what they're talking about, how to prevent Starforts now, how to prevent earthquakes now. And that just got me thinking about Starforts. We're talking about how they're energy based, how they are factories, how they are taking energy from the ether. Now it got me to thinking, what if some form of ancient civilization, whether you can call them Tartarian or is it pre-Diluvian, whatever you want to talk about, we don't know the exact ages of these Starforts. These just seem to be popping up from the medieval period, but we don't know when that was, because obviously they took so many years off the calendar. So if you think about it, these time period, did they build these Starforts to actually restrict the amount of earthquakes happening? Because if you think about it, we have the ancient continent known as Great Adria, a huge continent that is mashed up and hidden under Europe, and I'll show an image for it now. I've done an old video on it. It's just so funny that you have a huge continent hidden under another continent. How would that happen? Why is there no seismic activity like that, where a continent can crash and move under another continent, obviously mainland Europe? We don't see that. So what is happening now that is not happening then, when all this so-called action took place? Is it the fact that, I don't know if it's my idea, because obviously I've not checked everywhere, but what I'm theorising in this video is Starforts are placed in strategic locations to try and stop liquefaction or earthquakes in that area. It's just a proposal that I'm putting forward, whether it's been said before or not. I just found it fascinating that when you look at maps of Starforts, and there's plenty out there, and then you have obviously the plates, the so-called tectonic plates, and how all these earthquakes happen in the same regions, because obviously the plates are moving. But why is it not affecting us than everywhere else, because we have I don't like to say it sometimes, but we have shitloads of Starforts across Europe, England, everywhere. It's full of them, and the places that don't have them seem to have an excess amount of earthquakes. It's just an idea that I've put forward, and if you think about it, like I was saying, in a period that was so-called dark, when the world got reset and a few survivors, and you've seen people clawing out the mud, is this where the metaphorical message of humans being made from mud came from, or is there more? Because scientists say we're made from dust, and there's so many people that talk about we're made from dust crystals, and you name it. I've covered it in other videos, so it just got me to think, Starforts, could they be to stop earthquakes or liquefaction in these areas, because this is where the so-called elites are based. It's just an idea that I'm running past in this video and see what you guys think. I'll show you that. Just got my mind going, my imagination going, and then I came to the conclusion, could Starforts be designed as a not reset protection in the sense of earthquake or liquefaction protection, because of the frequencies and the actual locations of most of them being built on bedrock, amplifying that signal. It just came to me, is this a possibility? Like any theory, it's a theory. I'm just thinking out loud. Some people might enjoy it, some people might think it's sacrilege, but we get nowhere if we do not think and ask these questions. So this old article is asking, it is now technically possible to stop an earthquake. Scientists have devised a way to reflect seismic waves. And what it is they're drilling down, and obviously because there's holes, the frequencies are losing its power when it's not going through a medium. There's a gap, it's just so it's just losing, and basically this is easing the pressure of an earthquake. Now, when you've seen liquefaction, if you remember, I'll put a picture on the screen, you're seeing people banging the tubs at the sides, and things could pop up and things go down, but they pat it down. So my idea is the Starforts are built in a way to harness energy frequencies. Most of them have crypts and bones underneath to power, and they're shooting down to stop earthquakes and liquefaction happening in these elitist owned lands. It's just an idea. But like I said, we get nowhere. So this article was 2014, and this was talking about how they had a massive earthquake that night, 8.2 on the Richter scale, hit off the coast of Chile. The shock spawned tsunamis and put thousands of Chileans and New Zealand people, Hawaii, all on alert. Though the specific timing and the size of any particular earthquake is unpredictable, some seismic shocks are easier to see coming than others. Last night's earthquake was not much of a surprise, says seismologist Austin Elliott. The main shock was presaged by a swarm of many other little small 300 earthquakes, and the quake itself involved two tectonic plates shifting to close a gap that scientists have just been waiting to be closed. We can't see necessarily when an earthquake will hit, but we know that it will hit at some point. So this is just where it must have hit. And then we move further down, and it says, but what if that foreknowledge meant it was possible to stop earthquakes from doing as much damage? And the company is called Advice Motherboard. I mean, we talk about motherboard, Mother Earth as it is, and circuit board cities. They write that they developed a way of incredibly preliminary, of course, to stop an earthquake's energy in its tracks. When a fault line ruptures, the onset of an earthquake, waves are sent racing out through the ground. Some, like primary waves, cause the ground to shake back and forth. Others, like the slow-moving secondary waves, force the surface to rock and roll. It is this up and down rolling motion that often sends buildings tumbling. There are other types of waves too, the love waves and rally waves. I've never heard of them two waves before. Now, that the thing about waves is that they need a medium to pass through, as I was talking. By drilling holes in the ground, they are specifically spaced out according to the wavelength of the seismic waves. The scientists were able to disrupt the wave's propagation that was built up. The propagation. They built what is essentially an earthquake reflector. The image below shows the relative change in wave strength before and after the grid was drilled. As you can see, in the region where boxes were drilled, wave strength dropped immensely. Near the source, the strength increased as waves were reflected backwards. So in fact, he's talking some waves that could be made to reflect the waves back somewhere else on enemies who they're at war with. It's just an idea, because we're always thinking what are they for. People say that energy factories, even things like the pagodas and things on top of the buildings, were there a way of, in essence, to help diverting the energy of the lightning, like lightning rods do, but taking it down into the ground to reflect energy that's stored underneath. Who knows? These are just all ideas I'm talking about. So you can see that's what they were talking about. The seismic energy has been shifted and reflected back to the source. So they're talking about drilling holes, and obviously because the waves have nothing to move through, it is basically losing strength, so acting a bit as a reflector. This setup was highly idealised. The scientists only tried to stop one type of seismic wave, and they knew exactly the frequency of the waves. But theoretically, it does open the door to maybe one day building some sort of earthquake-proof wall around important buildings, like think nuclear reactors. So we know about ancient tech. They've had it. Is this what Starforts are? Ancient tech to stop the waves travelling. Because if you think about it, in Europe, I know we get little waves, and sometimes we get the odd one. I've not felt one in a while. You know what I mean? You're struggling to find of dates. Sometimes you'll get people saying, oh, did you feel that little tremor? Some of it's been linked to fracking and different things for gas. But we just, on a whole, we don't feel them. And it's always wondered to me why. Because we're near enough to plates as some are. And only people can say, well, the Europe plate doesn't move that much, but it has done in the past because you've got a huge continent hidden underneath it. So what has stopped it? There's something that stopped the frequency of these earthquakes. And this is just my idea of what. So this is talking about building resonance, structural stability during earthquakes. But you know me, I'll just use what I can, and it's intriguing me what I read. All buildings have a natural period of resonance, which is the number of seconds it takes for a building to naturally vibrate back and forth. The ground also has specific resonant frequency. Hard bedrock has higher frequencies, softer sediments. So there we go. We're talking about the higher frequencies of bedrock. Is that the key? Because when we see these Starforts, they are what we used to call bastion forts, or now castles, and they're normally on bedrock, or for obviously defence purposes. That's what we were always told. If the period of ground motion matches the natural resonance of a building, it will undergo the largest oscillations possible and suffer the greatest damage. And this just talks about in a classroom. I'm not watching a video because YouTube don't like you showing anything. But the key points are: frequency of a wave refers to the number of waves that pass through a point in 1 second. Period is the amount of time it takes one wave cycle to pass through a given point. Resonance is a tendency of the system to oscillate with greater amplitude at some frequencies than at others. Resonant frequency of any given system is a frequency at which the maximum amplitude oscillation occurs, and all buildings have a natural period of resonance, which is the number of seconds it takes for the building to naturally vibrate back and forwards. So the point I'm liking to use is, just take me breath. Starforts are built, they have a natural resonance as is. Obviously the material as well, these things are built out of matter, and then actually the location of them. I know you can say, oh, well, all castles that are built on bedrock and high altitude, elevations. But when people say Starforts are this, this, and this, I've always gone, okay, you know, I never knock anything, but it doesn't seem right. I've talked about how these periods had a lot of so-called resets in biological sense, in the plague and all that, and they hid in these towns. I've talked about how a lot of murders and children gone missing happens in these towns, but they're using the bones as an energy source. Once if the bones were also key to this, is they put underneath and they're using the energy as well. So it's an idea. I don't know what you guys think of these Starforts. Are all different shapes, meaning they all do different jobs. Are they for different types of frequency, different types of the waves that we're talking about in regard to, you know, earthquake? We know this realm is built on plates. It's just intriguing me. That's all. And obviously, when I have an idea in my head, I have to get it out, and I love to just see what you guys think of it. That these Starforts are a method of controlling or easing the waves, because everything has to go through a medium. So if these things are shooting energy down and changing the medium of the medium with frequency, then the oscillation waves of the earthquake or liquefaction are not necessarily working the same. Now you could flip that and say these Starforts are actually factories to create these frequencies to do liquefaction and earthquakes. So I'm not like, you know, whoa, I'm saying to this 130, it can go either way. So I just want to see what you guys think. Right guys, what I'm going to show you in a sec is a huge wow to me. It absolutely blew my mind and actually helped my theory ridiculously a lot. What if I could show you ancient proof of liquefaction happened, and what we've been told has been hidden in plain sight, it's been mislabeled. Now we're seeing all these images of dormant volcanoes, and people often talk about how the earth was a huge mining operation, and I have pictures of slag heaps coming up too, and they all look very, very similar. There's the good theories. People say volcanoes are not what they are, but what if I could show you they are in fact liquefaction? It will blow your mind, but on a bigger level. Now I'm going to chime out, just watch these few pictures, and then I'll chime back in a sec. Check this out. So what we have coming up now, guys, is liquefaction, but they're called something else. They're called sand boils or sand volcanoes. Now just have a look at them, but picture these on a huge mass scale, and you have volcanoes and have what looks like slag heaps too. And they're not identical. I saw these and I thought, wow, this is liquefaction. So not only does liquefaction suck them down, just look at this. That looks to me like a volcano. If I zoomed in, you didn't have scale, you say that was a dormant volcano. It's just plain as day now that I saw this, and it's just took me, it took me back. I'm like, no way. So we're talking of liquefaction not only suck the towns and cultures and civilizations down, but you also have them coming up looking like volcanoes. So this is just me asking this question. This happened in a place called New Madrid, Missouri. All them little patches are all sand boils, but they've called them blows. Now, earthquake summary said a sand boil is a sand and water that comes out of the ground surface during an earthquake as a result of liquefaction at a shallow depth. And here you have just a quick example of what happens. The sand and the water is coming up from underneath the ground, just like a volcanic eruption. Tell me I'm not onto something here. It is wowed me. It might not be correct, but just look. Here's the example again. In the big picture, a sand boil or a sand volcano, and the three at the side are volcanoes, what we know as volcanoes. To me, they are identical. I'll see what you guys think about this, but I'm just I'm like, no way. I just needed something as a little bit of a pinnacle to this theory, and I found it, and I'm I'm speechless.
Yeah, they call me the black sheep. You know they call me the black sheep. I'm running wild while you're asleep. That's why they call me the black sheep.
Hello. Oh my god, it's like, again, I'm trying to do videos and it's quiet, and then police sirens, everything. I swear everyone's like honing in on my time I go to record my thoughts. Oh my god, I should just try it in the middle of the night with a blanket over or something. So what do you guys think about this theory about Starforts being, I'm going to jump straight into it, about Starforts being prevention for liquefaction or earthquakes? Now, I know threw a lot at you. I don't know if people talked about this before or covered this before, because it's strange how we do sync with a lot of people's thoughts, and a lot of people do have these thoughts, and sometimes it's a case of who can get the thought out first, or people have egos. Oh, it's my thought, it's my thought. We do share a lot of thoughts, and it's just you're using your discernment to think, what are these Starforts for? What is the purpose? Is it just purely defense? Is it plague defense? Obviously we had a lot of the Black Plague. And what else is it for? Is it energy? Is it to harness the bones of the dead? Because obviously from the other videos I've showed you, most of these Starforts have crypts underneath and loads of, empty caves and different things. Now that ties into the earthquake prevention, because obviously they're not going through a medium. So, but it just gets you thinking. I'm just gonna have a little drink. So, I don't know how I come to this idea. I don't know if I've already said. Hopefully I have, but if I've not, I just don't know. I was just sitting there thinking about Starforts and what could they be? Because it's a hot topic. A lot of people are talking about it, and I do love to cover a lot of topics. That's why I go back and forth from different ones. I want to research a video. Sometimes some information I find in that will help to make another video, or sends me in another direction. That's why I always recommend to people, just research and enjoy it. You never know what you're going to find. Never discount anything. So with this in mind, I think I come across an earthquake post saying about how they can prevent earthquakes. And that just gave me an idea. What do we have a lot of, especially in Europe? And it's Starforts. Now we're talking about them, a lot of them being built on bedrock. Some of them obviously are not, because they're built in the lowlands of, like the netherworld, as it's called, Holland and different places like that. What could it possibly be for? Because we know that it's prone to flooding in them areas. Could it just be a case of, for flood prevention? But when we're talking of things, you just want to ask the questions, because I love brainstorming. I love to see what you guys are going to say to this and say, Paul, this has been done 10 years ago and this is what they thought. You know what I mean? So stuff like that, because I learn so much from you, and it's humbling, and it gets an emotional, because I do this for the love of it. I do this for the compadreship of talking to people and backward and forward and seeing what people think when YouTube let me. I know I research a lot on my way with the furries, but if you think about stuff like in Europe, the Eurasia plate, we have a continent from Spain, to Persia type way, called Adria, Greater Adria, and that just disappeared under what is known as Europe. So if we had this seismic events then, and able to move such differences, why do we not have earthquakes? Now you have the odd tremor here and there, and you might have it more in Greece and Spain, where nearer to the plate, the African plate. But we don't have it where, I mean, we could have the odd place it's toppled down, but compared to, is it the east side, west side of America, and then Chile, New Zealand, and different places where we don't, and what is it? There's other places, Turkey, and all them places that have a lot of earthquake action. And I know some of these places do have Starforts, but they don't have the amount that we have. Now that got me thinking, is it a case of they are built to stop the seismic waves from hitting these areas that are built on lower-lying areas? Because we've showed you through the theory that I'm going to go and talk about the sand boils or sand volcanoes. They're identical to what we see volcanoes and the mining of the slag heaps, and that just wowed me. It did. I was like, when you think, yeah, it's not a bad video. This, I'm asking a few good questions, but this was like the cream the cream on the top, and I was like, thank you to the research gods, because I'm very objective. I never knock anyone's opinions down or what the research, because I like looking into everything. But you cannot say on a minute, a smaller level, that these sand boils or sand volcanoes do not look like huge volcanoes. So imagine a time when we're having epic floods. So the ground liquefaction and towns and civilizations dropping a level, like in the hourglass theory. Is this a natural cleanse of Mother Earth? Because if we're in an enclosed system and the plates are put in place to move to create seismic activity, so civilizations disappear and they're starting afresh. It's like when I was talking before about tornadoes and hurricanes. If you're in an enclosed system, a pressurized system, you need the air to circulate, just like in your home. So you have, AC and different things. And that's what I think hurricanes and that is, to produce, keep the air circulating. So these are the things I always ask myself. And I'm one of the people who don't mind doing the what ifs, because that's how I learn. You'll get some staunch people who follow the scientific principle to the T, and if you do what ifs and these don't work, well, that's how even science works. They test out their crazy ideas until it's repeatable, and then if it's repeatable, it's classed as fact. You know what I mean? The scientific principle. But people who like me brainstorm, and it helps to get them through the day. So what harm is it? There's no harm in it. And someone who's smarter than me, more clue together, be able to put things together, could watch this, and it's like, wow, thanks Paul, that is the piece I needed, which people have said. I do help put certain pieces in place for people to get their ideas flowing. And it's all about your own personal journey, your own personal perspective on this life. We all see things differently. We do see a lot, but we do see things differently. It's like the extra little bit, the cream on the top is your own little thing to it. So I'm researching this, I'm thinking of these ideas, and I remembered about Great Adria being hidden underneath, and if we had the seismic activity back then, what stopped? Is it a case of all these resets, the so-called cabal or the ancient civilizations with great, antiquity, or whatever you want to call it, came up with a device to stop stop, the so-called reset of mudflood. And remember, that means to cleanse, from the etymology that you see in the beginning, and how a lot of civilization, cultures, religions talk about how we are made from mud. Is it a case of the first few times when this happened and a lot of people were wiped off this planet because of the floods, the mud flood resets, or any other type of reset? They saw people hiding in caves, hiding people in arks, just for like the Native Americans talk about sharing caves with the white people. Is it a case of we were coming out of caves that were blocked? We were coming out with holes, from underground, and we're covered in mud, and it's like some sci-fi novel, X-Files type of thing. And some sole survivors that were on the arks are seeing people crawling from the mud. Is that where creation story came from? And like I always say, it's not fact. It's just, I'm thinking out loud to like-minded people. So that's what got me into this ideas of what Starforts are. Are they to protect the elite? Are they to hide the evil goings of murder and eating people and getting, basically doing what they want? Are they prisons? Like some people have talked about, are they prisons for the fallen? I've talked about the old videos that could the fallen actually be buried underneath creating these star patterns. So I've talked about a lot in different videos, and this is just another one to add to it, to get our brains thinking, our working over, and let's see, where the pieces fall. And you cannot, well, you can, some people will, but you can see. And when I got to that liquefaction, and obviously I'm not putting videos of liquefaction because obviously you get strikes for, unless you get people's permission. So I always ask permission, and if not, I do a little tick. I look for GIFs to put in, and that's what you see. So liquefaction, and the principle, they pat it down, they put objects in, they give it a whack or a shake, objects disappear, some objects come up. And I've been talking about the tempest fugit being in an enclosed system, but in an 8 hourglass type of thing, shaking civilizations, sinking away, liquefaction. And people have talked about that as the theory of where these civilizations went, because some places are just completely covered. So that's where I've ongoingly been thinking about what Starforts could be. And then I'm thinking, oh God, could they actually be preventing seismic activity coming in, like a curtain, like a frequency curtain? If these all aligned on layer lines and included a map from that 13th Monkey did. So I've put a link in the channel. If you don't remember, it's 13th Monkey, and then Colm Gibney. They do great stuff on Starforts. They're the good guys who have been heavily, researching this. It's because I do other topics. I don't put all, I don't look at that one topic. And these guys, you don't need to do as much research when you've got them guys covering these topics. So please check them out, 13th Monkey and Colm Gibney. And if you remember, I'll put the link in the description. So, as you can see from that map, we have a lot in you. It's like the condensed, and obviously that is on the map and more you come out. But think about a curtain. And I didn't twig until I got to this stage, and I wasn't going to go back and re-edit, that in France they have the Maginot. It sounds like a Maginot, no chance. The Maginot line, where the French supposedly built bunkers, and some of them do look at Starforty type, along the line between the border, and they were hoping that would be protection against the marching armies of Germany. And this was after World War One, so they built this in roughly so-called 1930s. So you can imagine lines of Starforts giving off an energy depending on what structure they are built out of. You added power of the bones underneath, giving you energy, and you can basically protrude like a force field of frequency to protect or reduce the risk of more liquefaction resets happening and hurricane earthquakes. So it's just an idea, is this what it is? Because on a whole, I know, like I said before, we do have earthquakes in this, but on a whole, compared to everywhere else, Europe gets away with it compared to anyone else. And someone will shout, oh, well, they have a very bad one in it. You know, I'm not saying the specific one-offs or two-offs. I'm on a whole. And it's weird you have to say these things because people get triggered. It's like me saying that we're in an enclosed system. People get triggered by that. It's ridiculous. We're all here to learn and take what information that we resonate with and then discard the rest. I mean, I keep everything, but I'm just a sad who just loves researching. So what do you guys think? Let me know in your thoughts, because I'm not going to talk too long. I'm just going to finish off now with the bit on the sand boils or sand volcanoes. So I'm finishing up when I'm researching it. I think I'm going to do my thoughts now. And don't ask me why I just typed that something in and boom. And as soon as I saw it, I went, they, to me, look like volcanoes and they look like slag heaps that, you know, are from mining. What if it's been mislabeled? Can you imagine if we had a reset, like a world killer, like people are portraying that's going to happen again, but we've had it already. It talks about it in the Great Flood. So if this Great Flood happened, where's the water come from? Has it come from the Great Rift? Has it come from underground? And if it comes underground and it's hit these sand, you know, the low level sand and created a volcanic type of eruption or an earthquake, and it's weakened these areas and it's come out and it's, you know, it's spread like that. Is it why they've done this? I just think it's just good to have more options. I'm never one for just a red or the blue pill. I want other pill. I don't want to take a pill. I want to break the door down myself. So when people are arguing over these are melted buildings, these are this, how about another theory to put into it? And I'll tell you what, this holds up like I'm saying about the sand boils. Just look at them. You can imagine a sand boil like that, or you can get bigger ones. And an event of this magnitude happened. The sand boils are going to be epic. Is this what happened? And sand and mud came out, spewing, covered everywhere. A mud flood. That just is, for me, not more plausible. It just rings more true. I can see something like that because I like to use examples. I like to ask the questions. Do you think this looks like a miniature version of that? And that will get your brain thinking, because sometimes things of a small magnitude can happen on a bigger, more epic scale if and when these things happen. So if a mass frequency broke out and it was a cleanse, reset, like the first mass, I talk about all that, and the wiping the surface clean of the dead skin, which it could be us and animals and trees and whatnot, is that's what's happening. So these people have thought ancient tech, civilization with all the brains in the world, more advanced than us, thinking, how can we stop this? Can we make more and more cave systems to soften the blow? Is that why we don't have many in Europe? Because there's a lot of cave systems. And the bones on top of that, and actually the design of the patterns, formulating down, energy down. Because we always think about going up, like, sorry, like me as above, so below Starfort video. Now I'm going the other way. So just imagine a line of Starforts giving off a frequency and energy, maybe a magnetized type of energy, going down to stop the wave system of earthquakes, or the tectonic plate frequency that moves on a grand scale. It's just an idea, and I was excited about making this video and finding this thing about the sand boils or sand volcanoes looking identical to what we see. And I am not one to say this is fact, hasn't any flaws. It's lots of flaws, but I'm flawed. You know what I mean? I'm a normal human, whatever that means in these days, and I'm just here to get through life and share brainstorming ideas with you guys. And this is my platform, and people, you know, are respecting the different types of videos that I do. So I just want to hear what your guys' thoughts on it. Hopefully, well, I'm not bothered if it's not being well received, because it's an idea. Some are good ideas, some are bad ideas, and we all have them. Just see what you guys think about it, and I'll see you all in the chat. Hopefully. Hey, I managed to get a video more out of the way. I had to shut the windows. I'll have to just like clad the windows and doors. So again, Starforts could be there to quell a wave frequency from seismic activity. And obviously they're built in different types of stone, different types of stone underneath bedrock, soils. Could this, what in fact has been holding back the quantity of earthquakes? Who knows? It's just another brainstorming idea from myself. See what you guys think. But more importantly, as I always say, take care, pay it forward, do one good deed a day, make someone smile, and don't forget to smile yourself. Bye guys.